Emergency Carbon Scoring Pod. Kit and Ken, hello.
Hey, how you guys doing today?
Yay.
Hey guys.
I'm waving.
Yay.
I'm waving. I
Are
like
you
doing this video thing.
I think it's helpful. I mean, do you guys do it on We Were Gamers?
No, because it messes up my microphone. So
Oh,
last
okay.
week, I was not careful in the way that I set up the behind the scenes of carbon scoring. Uh, I was not careful at how I set up my OBS recording when the system updated to 26.0.2. It switched over my mic input to automatic instead of the nice microphone. So it has been rectified, and now is no. I noted something I have to check out for when I do video. So we're good to go today. It's doing the right mic. We're good.
Nice.
Okay, back to the topic. Emergency carbon scoring should have maybe a separate title. I don't know what it should be though. But you guys were so good at giving me direction on the eventual music cues. I had to ask, like, what would your emergency scoring be?
I mean, this is a Mando Monday. That's the first thing that comes to
Uh,
mind. I know.
Can
I'm
you
sorry.
just play the klaxon from the Death Star? Yeah.
That one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It's an emergency event.
Yeah.
Actually, is there any? Oh, they have. I'd say they have something on the. I'm trying to think if there's any type of proceed to the nearest exit thing. I think was one on the Tantive 4, which I hear it's Tantive E4, and I don't care.
Who's
Um,
Tantive?
dude, people, and it's
The
like
radio dramas.
I know we
the
should
radio
still
dramas.
probably try to get into the at versus AT thing.
Stop trying to make AT-AT happen.
No one says at in the show.
Everyone says at.
On the show they don't.
It's like TIE Fighter
At the
versus
bare
TIE
minimum,
Fighter.
a third of the people on this show say at.
So do you say an
33% minimum?
Do you say an at?
No, I say chicken walker. We've been over this.
No, we have been over this, and Ken pointed out that a chicken walker is only from Empire Strikes Back, and that
You didn't ask me what it technically was. You asked me what I called it, and I pronounce ATST chicken walker.
Okay,
there you go.
Point. Yeah,
that's
sure.
pronunciation.
You're right. I did not specify. Oh boy, I need to relate to you an experience that has happened to me personally. Excitedly, while watching The Mandalorian with my beautiful and loving wife, I kept turning to her and said, "Hey, that's super cool. Look at that. That's the thing from the thing." And then she would nod knowingly like, "Okay, I'm enjoying watching this with you, and I love you very much." But how cool was the episode where you got to see every single second? You're like, oh, look, R5. Oh, look, he's riding Anakin's pod racing thing. Engine.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pod engine, yeah.
It
was good.
Okay,
like
this is an emergency pod to talk about The Mandalorian, Chapter 9, Episode 1, Season 2 spoilers from this moment on.
The Marshal.
First of all, I'm so glad they kept the chapter things. I don't know if you guys are happy about that, but I was really happy about that.
Yeah, I'm on board.
And
I'm okay with it.
And I got deked super hard when you see Boba Fett, who so Katie looks up the cast list because I was like, I hear that voice and I know instantly that it's Timothy Olyphant, and I told her there was Timothy Olyphant. Like so I'm like, it's not Boba Fett because it's Timothy Olyphant, right? Like, she obviously would not know that I would know the sound of Boba Fett's voice from having watched the Clone Wars for a year trying to catch up to you guys. So she's like, no, the IMDb says that he's playing Boba Fett.
Oh my heavens! Oh my goodness!
So
oh god, I'll never forget. Like sorry, go on. I just in my head, I'm thinking of the arguments I've had with people over the legitimacy of IMDb, and explaining to them at one point IMDb had listed the villain for Spider-Man 3 was Aunt May as Carnage, and I'm like, what are you like? Someone like stop listening to this. And then they were trying to tell me like, oh, in Suicide Squad, Clint Eastwood's son's playing Nightwing, and I'm like, no, he's not. He's just playing a random dude number 5. Like he has no role, and he ended up playing no role. And I'm like, don't just take the stuff like oh, this is like I can go on there and change it. Like I have my own IMDb. Actually, I have an IMDb thing from some video game work that I did, and I could go in there and change it. That doesn't mean that it's true. It just means that it's there. Like it's like Wikipedia.
Yeah,
like
I just got a kick
there's
out
a
of.
certain amount of.
I got a
Yeah.
lot of kick out of the deek of saying Boba Fett's coming back for season 2, and they make the big deal out of it, right? And you're like, oh well, they said the actor was coming back, and on this very podcast, Kit said, what if he comes back and it's actually Captain Rex? And so we have that whole discussion, and then dollar store Boba Fett walks into the room, and you're like, that's not Boba Fett. There's no way that's Boba Fett. But we've gone through the whole second season thinking it's Boba, and all these thoughts are glowing through your head, and then Timothy Olyphant speaks from under the helmet, and I was just very, very excited, and I couldn't find anyone else in the room that was as excited as me. So I had to call you guys and be like, we have to talk about this, because I felt like every few minutes in that episode, they really threw at you like, hey, we really love Star Wars. Do you like Star Wars? Because we're going to talk about Tusken Raiders for an hour. I don't think we need to do a recap of the episode, because I think everybody did a recap of the episode on Friday night or Friday morning or Friday at 1 a.m. or whenever the heck they watched it. There were some cool things that came out, I think, over the course of the week, and I just wanted to like note them and then talk about what you guys loved about it and see if you caught any references that anybody else didn't catch or whatever. I loved the new format. I don't know if you guys noticed, but it was about like 8 minutes longer than last season.
Well, I mean, the episodes have all been varying lengths actually. Like there's no like if you look at the previous episodes, they all kind of go if like, oh, this one's 35 minutes, this one's 33, this one's 40. Like they do vary. This is the longest episode.
The longest one last season was like 46 minutes.
Right. And this one's longer than that.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. They're coming back and stuff. So, I mean,
I'd bet they're longer.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see. I mean, that's why I think like saying like it's a format change.
Okay.
I mean, it's
I might be premature, but did you like that it was longer? Oh yeah. I'll throw out there that I like that it was longer.
I'm happy. I'm happiest when they take the amount of time that they need to tell the story that they need to tell, which is one benefit to this format. Not just The Mandalorian, but any show that doesn't have to fit into a specific half an hour or hour time slot and plan for commercials, that they can just say like, yeah, so the rest of our shows are, whatever, 25 minutes long or whatever they are, but this one we need to go 4 minutes longer, so we're going to go 4 minutes longer. I like that. And or conversely, if they, this one is fine if this one's an hour, and then next week they only need a half an hour, that they don't need to pad it with 20 minutes of extra filler.
I agree.
That doesn't need to be there.
I agree with that, but I felt also like there were moments last season where you didn't get a breath because they had to get through so much stuff, I think. And like this episode is particularly, they took so much time to take aerial shots of like the dune sands, and you're like, ah, cool. Like I get to see more of Tatooine than I think we would have seen, or definitely than we saw last season. I think that the sets were much more tightly focused when he was on Tatooine last season. And this one definitely had those like sweeping CGI shots of Tusken Raiders on Banthas and a whole bunch of other stuff. The other thing I heard come out was the amount of work they put into creating the Tusken Raiders and creating a society for the Tusken Raiders, to me implies that they're going to be doing more Tatooine stuff. They brought in some ASL people, some actual deaf people to create Tusken Sign Language for this season. So I don't know if that like sparks anybody's interest, but it kind of sparks my interest. I mean, if we're gonna explore our culture, I'm glad they've done that.
I've always been interested in the Tuskens and Tusken culture, and so and the Jawas too.
Sure.
So I would be down for that. Especially since, and I feel like we got some of this with I mean, they didn't get very much screen time at all in the original trilogy, and then they got a little bit more. We saw the village in the prequels and whatnot, but
the village getting
they have,
massacred.
yeah. But you know what I mean. Like they got a little bit. They weren't just like,
yeah.
We got to see a glimpse of women and children in huts and stuff, as opposed to just some guys riding around on banthas.
Yeah.
Being the sort of just the
villains
two-dimensional
or
foil.
whatever.
Yeah.
Not really villains, but I guess fauna.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, at one point, essentially antagonist, but also, I think I kind of appreciate this show too, or this episode too, because I mean, as much as we're in a very divisive time right now, and this show, I mean, it's whipping a little bit of lesson at people, which is kind of, I think, necessary and kind of a good. And it's one of those things where it's like people are like, oh, keep politics out of my comic books. I'm like, it's always been there. Just kind of shut up and recognize that it's always been there. This, I mean, as kind of simple as it was kind of like, hey, look at, you have to cooperate with people. You have to move aside some of your preconceived notions about what people are and who they are. And I mean, it's not necessarily super blatant, but it's good that it's in there. Like that's why we learned that, oh, they speak and they have a sign language so they can communicate that with themselves and with those outside of their culture. And that shows that brings, and then it brings the two brings the town folk and the quote unquote natives to understanding, so that they can work together to save both towns, both villages. And it's like that's where it's like definitely seen more them putting time into it with the sign language and developing a little more of that society. Like, oh, I mean, Tuscans are definitely clearly more a Native American, or I guess I don't. I guess I don't know if Aboriginal still. I don't know if it's still a good term or not, but they're taking a moment to think about that and acknowledge that. Be like, oh, these people lead a different life, but it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with them. It's just a different life, and so I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, the Mandalorian definitely said, they've survived here and killed crate dragons, and you're just, you're squatting basically.
Yeah, and I love that. I love that they pulled the crate pearl out, which I think is a KOTOR reference.
I think it is, right? Yeah.
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 Yeah, I think it's a KOTOR reference. I think there's also a novel thing, but I'm pretty sure it's KOTOR for sure.
It's one of, I don't remember which one it is, but it's definitely one of the two KOTOR games.
I loved every minute of that. Although once he killed it, it was still under the sand. I didn't get the same imagery that you got in the first, originals, where you saw the huge bones in the desert and they're just like massive and hulking over everybody, and so this was much more manageably sized, probably for it needed to be because of the sets and the way they filmed this show and everything else. But you definitely got sense of scale at certain points. How did you feel about a crate dragon showing up in Star Wars for the first time?
I thought it was cool.
Yeah, I thought it was awesome.
I mean, people didn't really play KOTOR, I guess.
Yeah. I'm hoping, like, I'm curious too, like, because I mean that's the whole crate dragon thing, and they're like, oh, well, where's it live? It lives in an abandoned Sarlacc pit. It's like, there's no such thing. It is if you eat the Sarlacc. Like,
yeah.
I'm curious too, because it's like, so we have the size of the head, and we have like the first bit of rib cage or whatever you want to call that. I'm guessing, is there more still buried underneath, like tail section? Because it's like, I'm like, and that's like a ton of meat. And it's interesting too to see that it looks like the Mandalorian Din had a chunk of it on the back of his speeder too. Like he's like, oh, I'm taking that back. I'm like,
oh yeah, Sunday roast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, what's going on there? Like, and also, are they gonna? I guess they to take it out with the whole payment was that the Sand People, the Tusken Raiders, get to keep all of the bounty. And that was their payment to help stop it. I'm like, all those people back in town probably use some meat too. This is a lot of meat. Like, I mean, I don't know, but I was curious about that. So,
I mean, I think a lot more Tuskens probably died in that scenario than the townspeople, so they earned their keep.
Yeah,
Especially the poor dude that got eaten while he was trying to feed it a bantha.
that was pretty
clever. Good. A lot of that episode was clever, especially the Cobb Vanth stuff was very clever.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Boba Fett armor for a second. I have two separate tangents of asking you guys about what maybe canonically still exists. One of them is about Weequay, and the other one's about Boba Fett. Which one do you want to go first?
I mean, we can go for it, Kit.
Let's do the Weequay first.
Okay, so Cobb calls him Weequay.
Yeah, that's like messed up as hell, isn't it? Like
does he not know his name, or is his name Weequay? I had a memory, and maybe I'm wrong. I had a memory, and I might be wrong, but the Weequay in the books in Jabba's palace for the Bounty Hunter series, I thought they named him Weequay.
Oh,
but I can't remember if that's right, and I can't find it anywhere.
I thought that Weequay was a species.
It is. It's Hondo's species.
Okay. Yeah.
Hondo Anaka is a Weequay. There were tons and tons of Weequay on the Jabba's sail barge. So if you were just looking at it,
so you're saying that one of the Weequays in Jabba's palace was named Weequay?
So I don't. I'm trying to remember. So if you took a myopic view, the idea. I know that you've got an answer here, Ken, but I just want to finish my thought. If you took a myopic view of filmmaking and said, we want to make sure that no one had to watch Clone Wars, but if they did watch Clone Wars, they'd be like, oh, it's Hondo's species. But you could still say, okay, if they had to have watched Return of the Jedi, right? And therefore, this is still a fun reference to say, oh, those guys were on Jabba's sail barge. But yeah, Cobb literally just calls him Weequay. And in my head canon of having read all those bounty hunter books, I thought that there was a guy just called Weequay in Jabba's palace. Ken, what did you need to say?
Getty Rook was the Weequay who served the Hutt crime lord Jabba.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's that. I'm really bothered by the fact that he just calls him Weequay when it's like essentially just calling him by his race, which I'm kind of like, not cool, dude. Also, that guy's been there since the fall of the Empire, since the destruction of the second Death Star. It's not like he just showed up. Like when people call Din Mando, I'm like, yeah, but by the last episode we find out that he doesn't tell anyone his name, so that's a little on him. So if he's like saying I'm not going to give anyone my name, then they're just going to call me Mando, and I'm not going to correct them. Okay, but dude's been at the bar for like years, and you're just like, hey, Weequay. Ooh, it's not the best plan.
Is it implied? He called him Weequay in the past, right? He didn't call him Weequay in the present.
There's no dialogue in the scene. Like they're just like, he looks over at the exploding Death Star in the hollow, and then the bad guys show up, and he's like, oh, time to run, and they get out of there.
Okay.
Like that's like the sum total of that. And there's no kind of like back and forth as far as I remember. Because at the time it's just Cobb talking over the past event.
Okay.
Yeah.
It bothered me a little bit, but I was kind of like, no one's gonna know really in the real world. There's a billion other fun references in there too. Before we get to Boba Fett, I don't know if you saw the speeder, the black speeder from what was that? The episode 4 redo, the like fancy version where they add the nice black speeder. And there is the one that the pirates use to come rob them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's like a callback.
I did recognize that Cobb's one looks Cobb's pod racer bike looks a lot like Anakin's pod.
Oh, it is Anakin's pod. Specifically, they put the things on it from his pod.
I mean, it's also a different color, but I mean, I think it
yellow.
Is too.
It's Anakin's pod racer.
I think it is too. I'm just saying, like,
okay, Kit, you have to weigh in here. Is it Anakin's?
Well, it's at least the same style engine. Like, I don't know if it's actually the engines that were on.
He sits on the side
Anakin's
of it.
Pod.
Like he's directly attached to the side of it. He's not riding it like it's a motorcycle. It's an engine he's attached to.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, that's probably Anakin put the pod together, but he probably didn't design he probably didn't build the engines. It's probably mass manufactured engine.
I feel like
he could have had another one.
I feel like it's
Tatooine. I mean, that's definitely why they put it in there.
Tatooine. Everything has to get reused, right? There's nothing that gets put to waste there. So
it definitely could be Anakin's because they sell the pod at the end of
that's true.
the race.
They do.
So.
Blue milk obviously gets reused here.
And the bar, that's not blue milk.
That's the stuff from the Seven Samurai episode. The shrimp wine.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
That looked like blue milk.
Was it spatchka? Is that what it's called?
Spatchka. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. He's got it.
Oh.
It's a liqueur.
Huh. I missed that. I just saw the color of it and I thought it was blue milk.
Yeah.
Fair point. Lots of banthas, which is cool.
I love the part when he's brushing the bantha's teeth. That was funny.
Yeah. That was really good.
Do you want to jump back? You said you had the two tangents. One was the Weequay, one was Cobb Vanth and his armor.
I'm ready if you're ready.
Okay. I mean, we can.
Boba Fett. Canonically.
His backpack's got jets.
How are they going to make this work? Because he took his armor because it looks like Mandalorian armor. But as far as I recall, Jango Fett is not what one would consider a Mandalorian.
There is a lot of talk amongst the fans about what the problem is too is like we like trying to excise your knowledge that is legends and only look at the new canon.
Sure.
But there is the idea that Jango was not a by birth Mandalorian.
Okay.
And possibly like one who was adopted and then left. Right? What's up?
But then he would count, much like Din is not
right.
a Mandalorian. He's a foundling, but he's still a Mandalorian. Yeah.
But then he left the order as well. If and there's also the discussion of if he ever was to begin with, which I guess that depends on where you're pulling your canon from. And there's also the idea too that I don't know if you were getting to this, is that hypothetically his armor isn't Beskar.
It's not.
Because
right?
That's to my knowledge in canon it's supposed to be Durasteel.
Right.
Like it's a Durasteel facsimile of Mandalorian armor.
But Jango's looks like it could have been Beskar.
I mean all the other Beskar, just because it's silver. I mean, there's other Mandalorians that have silver painted armor as well. Yeah. So, and we also don't know if I mean, did Boba Fett recover his father's armor and use that? Because where does Boba get his armor?
It's a good question because Boba goes to prison, so it's not like Boba's just holding on to his dad's armor in the lockup. You know what I mean?
When does Boba go to prison?
Boba goes to prison in Clone Wars. Boba's thrown in prison for like 2 years in Clone Wars, and then gets out of prison and tries to kill Mace Windu.
I'm trying to remember those episodes now, because I do remember in Clone Wars when he's running his own gang and runs into Asajj Ventress. But anyways, still think about it to me, if he's a criminal to the scale that we believe he is, he has stashes.
Sure.
Like he can't fit in the armor yet, so he just stashes it.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, and then just comes back to it. It's his safety locker.
Okay.
Or he leaves it with a friend, or leaves it with Jabba.
If he is a Mandalorian and if he is alive, he would not have left his armor, right?
Depending on how, so he wasn't. It's clear that he wasn't raised in the strictest. And that's the thing I've thought about too. Is like when we discuss, the way that the Mandalorian won't remove his helmet around others. And you think about it, like certain religions have an orthodox version versus kind of universal church of everyone. Like you have a
conservative and
you have those, right? Exactly. So it's like you could have someone who's like, oh, like this is I'm a strictly orthodox. I'm Jewish and I'm strictly orthodox, or you're someone who's far more lenient and just kind of like, oh, I love a good burger and shrimp and X, Y, and Z, and like they eat whatever they want. And so it's like he was likely wasn't living the strictest Mandalorian code.
He's not a
by any
kosher
stretch of the
Mandalorian,
means.
Is what you're saying.
Right. I mean, his father didn't wear a mask. He didn't wear a mask sometimes. It just kind of threw to the wind. So does he have the same attachment to it that the Din does? I definitely don't think so. Because
okay,
here we go.
So, but in all of the cartoons, all of the Mandalorians take their helmets off constantly.
All the time.
So, right. I don't think that we should judge whether somebody's a Mandalorian or not as based on whether they take their helmet off or not.
I remember asked you this question because that confuses me to no end of where in the spectrum of what a Mandalorian is what they're trying to imply in this show. Because like he says he was taken in by the Death Watch, which we know most Mandalorians would not consider Mandalorians because they basically screwed all of Mandalore, right? All the Mandalorians in the Clone Wars take their helmets off. We don't have any idea whether or not Mandalorians were around, accepted, whatever, after the Clone Wars. There's still, after having done an extra season with a Siege of Mandalore, no explanation of what happens to all these Mandalorians to make them be underground and how certain Mandalorians can be above ground. I don't know if you guys caught on the internet one of the like crazy theories about why Boba Fett's allowed to be a Mandalorian and out in the world. One person I came across was like, it would make a lot of sense for Darth Vader to hire Boba Fett to have a bounty hunter around that sounds like Rex.
I mean,
you know, like, okay, that kind of makes a lot of sense if you want to try and back build some canon.
Yeah, but I mean, there's still clones out there that he could have put into service in the 501st. In fact, a lot of the 500.
I thought they talk about how they got rid of all the clones.
A lot of them.
Purpose.
So a fair amount of the clones became the Purge Troopers, because they had that genetically engineered chip to make them hunt the Jedi. So they became Purge Troopers were a lot of, I don't want to say reformatted clones, but essentially clones that were used for that purpose of hunting down the Jedi. That was done in some of the Darth Vader comics. Some of them simply did just retire out, like because of the genetic engineering. They just aged out. So it kind of depends. I mean, they're still around. Plus, if he really came down to it, he could always just genetically engineer another 25. Why not? He's Darth Vader. He can do as he pleases, pretty much.
Yeah, it's a lot of backbuilding. No matter how you slice it, really. And I like Kit's point about like don't overthink, because a lot of this doesn't fit together easily. But like at a certain point, they're going to have to try and mesh some of this stuff and I guess we get to the big thing for 5 minutes or whatever. You think the last shot is who a lot of people think it is. Spoiler warning again.
Yes, 100%.
You are in. Yeah. You are in on the theory, and the very served up explanation that is Boba Fett at the end.
Yeah, I think that's Boba Fett, and not a clone or Rex.
Yeah, not Rex.
I mean, not a non Boba Fett clone. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think it's Boba. I think also like there's lots of the different things that kind of point to the idea that he could have even been amongst. I mean, he looks like he's with the Tuskens. Like he could have been living with the Tuskens. He has their Goffy stick. He has their rifle. He's wrapped up. I mean, especially if he's maybe if he's given up the armor, or if he just he's trying to get it back, but he's just trying to survive in the meantime, that he could be hiding amongst them with his full head wrapped and stuff. It's hard because it's like, again, I always bleed over between legends and stuff, but there are sometimes humans living amongst the Tuskens if they've earned their place with them. So I mean that's happened in some of the stories. Yeah, I think he's very likely lived there. I mean, by the way, did you guys know that Cobb Vanth existed in the novels already?
No.
The Aftermath novels?
No.
Okay.
Is he part of which novel?
The Aftermath run. So it's essentially the remnants of the Empire as they start to fall after Return of the Jedi. Because there's still obviously holdouts in different areas that are trying to like the very very much like kind of crime boss idea of like, oh, all these different Moffs try to be like, oh well, this is my domain, everyone should get under me because I'm the best Moff, and they all start to fight over supremacy.
Okay.
There's some that kind of fall into their own like, oh, this is my area. But yeah, Cobb Vanth, he pops up in one of the novels and talks about how that's when he first gets the armor from someone. He also, I mean, do people want?
No, he
are
got
you too good
the
with?
armor in the show.
He did.
Yeah.
But he also got it in the books first, and this came out, I want to say 2-3 years ago.
Did he get it the same way in the books?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's consistent.
I remember that scene. I didn't remember the name. But as soon as you started talking, I was like, oh, I wonder if he was the guy who got the Boba Fett armor in the. There were in the Aftermath books. There were a bunch of like little, not really like there's like the main story through line, and then there's like kind of sides, little side stories. It's like 1 or 2 or 3 chapters throughout the book that have these like little those sorts of like little things. They're not very long. Like and one of them was a guy buying the Boba Fett armor from some Jawas.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and they talk to you about it's interesting because I think they call it Freetown in the book. Like he's the Marshal of Freetown, because there's talk about how they're free from the Hutt now because Jabba died in Return of the Jedi. There's also some, I mean, spoilers for people who haven't read the Aftermath. It's just mild stories to the side stories. I believe they even talk about the Rancor Wrangler and the fact that he's destitute after the fall of Jabba's palace because he's like all I did was take care of that guy. He was my best. Like when he walks up to him, he's like, no, because he killed his Rancor. But like after after Jabba dies too, he's like, shit, I don't know what to do. And I think there's a baby Hutt, and he's like, hey, Cobb comes to him and is like, hey, you're good with animals. Do you want to be responsible for this Hutt? And this is how we'll essentially maintain our freedom is we'll have a Hutt in charge, even though it's his kid, but it's a figurehead.
That's cool.
So, yeah. Again, it's not the main story of the Aftermath novels, but it's a good like side story to help you continue to build the world.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I'm glad that if they did that they're willing to pull these things in and make sure that they're connected in a way.
Yeah.
The name of that land speeder is a V-35 Courier.
The one that the miners are traveling in?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
And it's in... Oh, it was on Naboo. I misremembered the movie. No, Owen Lars has one. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. This could be his.
It could be. Who knows? Everything gets reused on Tatooine, you know?
Yeah.
It could be. It could be. But I definitely recognized it. I was like, oh, that's a land speeder. I've seen it before. That's cool. I think that I would love for it to be a head fake and for it to be a clone. But that's such a deep pull. It doesn't fit the show, right? Like,
yeah,
there's some deep pulls, but they're always side pulls. They're not like a Darksaber. You don't need to have a backstory for, although it's great that if you know the backstory for the Darksaber, right? But
yeah,
it just looks like a cool sword if people don't know. But I don't think they can write in a clone instead of it being Boba Fett. So I wonder how deep here we get into creating Boba Fett for the first time, right? In the new canon. I mean, there's a lot of people that love Boba Fett from the old canon, but if you only watch the movies, he just said as you wish, right? And got his jetpack hit. Although, did you see the Mando? Din smacks the jetpack in the exact same way Han smacks the jetpack.
Yeah, very similar. It's just like pop.
That's great.
And also too, like I was rewatching it because someone had mentioned it.
Tell your buddies that
this backpack. Yeah, I mean, if it's the same one that Boba got from Jango, that backpack also cost Jango his life, because at the time when he was trying to fly away from Mace, it was malfunctioning, and he's like, you see it like sparking off, and he's just like, oh nope, decapitated. So like that jetpack is bad luck if it's still the same one all the way through.
Cobb Vanth, it worked out for him. He shot a missile off of it. He got away from a crate dragon with it. I'd say it was good luck for him. Yeah.
I was glad we got a rocket firing Boba Fett.
That was pretty good. And the whole bend over, the actual bend over to shoot the rocket, which is totally unnecessary. And the eyepiece coming down and targeting like it should.
The rangefinder. That was awesome.
Seeing the actual Boba Fett rangefinder in use for the first time. It was great. I can't think of a minute I didn't enjoy watching that, or like, other than thinking about the complex explanation and hoop jumping we're gonna have to go through for Filoni to make everything fit, which he's gonna need and want to do, right? The fear there is the only thing I'm left with, other than that I just loved seeing the Mandalorian come back that strong.
Yeah. I think too, there's things like nods, like essentially you look at the armor that Cobb was wearing, which I love that it didn't fit. I love that it was very clear that like this isn't his. Like also, I mean, it's on.
It's kind of He's too lanky for the armor.
Yeah, Timothy Olyphantastic decided like, no, this is gonna be perfect. It looks like kid's armor. I'm an
adult. He's
got
his scarf sticking out the helmet. Yeah. It's so good.
So yeah,
it shows you how much of that suit was actually a bodysuit underneath, right? When oh man, I forgot his name. Bullock. Jeremy Bullock was playing him originally. How much thicker he was, and how much bodysuit he had on.
Yeah.
It just goes to show you.
Yeah. But I like that there's wear on the armor, so even if like, so we have the idea that like, it takes 1,000 years to be digested by the Sarlacc. The armor does look like it's been burned. It's been, the acids like got to it a little bit from the Sarlacc pit maybe, and even if Boba Fett, who we believe we see at the end, he's scarred. Like it's not like it's not like disfigured, but he's scarred enough, like, as if maybe digestive acid got him on a bit and got inside the helmet a bit. Like, it seems like, I mean, he's seen some stuff, like, pretty clearly.
Yeah.
So,
how are you at all? I already said I'm trepidatious about Boba Fett. How are you both feeling about knowing that this is where we're going?
I'm on board. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I would say I'm on board because, I mean, I had heard about certain casting things already, and I also know more casting stuff moving forward. I'm curious if we would ever get anything as far as Jodo Cast, the Boba Fett impersonator from like the Dark Horse comics. Like he had very similar armor, and he would impersonate Boba Fett sometimes, just to be like, to get the bounties a little bit higher. Like, oh yeah, no, you got Boba Fett here. You had to pay through the nose, and so he'd like, I thought that was always kind of funny. It was and it was kind of started to be based off of, because of certain paint jobs of the toys were different, and they're like, he's like, oh no, that's a new character. This is Jodo Cast now.
See, so that's part of why I have done more and more to avoid casting news for stuff, is because like when Timothy Olyphant popped out of that helmet, it made my night. The episode could have been bad, and I still would have enjoyed, and so that's why I avoided. But Kit, what were you gonna say?
I think it's gonna be cool. Okay. I'm glad Boba Fett's back. I was hoping Boba Fett would come back. I'll take more clones too. Sure. I'll take as much Tamura Morrison as that. I hope that they cram him into every episode. But
how awesome would it be if he's literally just in every episode going forward? He won't be.
He won't be. I think that would be great.
Yeah. Do you think they're going forward with the same format as last time? It feels a little bit maybe like they could. They spent a lot of time developing Cobb Vanth, where we could not see Cobb Vanth again for a little while, and then when we get to the last 3 episodes, all of a sudden the Mando needs a crew again.
I would be pretty surprised if they cast somebody of the of Timothy Olyphant, and he's a one-off.
I would be surprised too.
We might not see him for several episodes, but like I would be surprised if he doesn't show up again this season and probably subsequent seasons.
Awesome.
Do we think that on that note, do we think we've seen the last of Lucy Liu? I'm sorry,
Lucy
Ming-Na
Liu.
Wen.
No, Ming-Na Wen's coming
Sorry,
back, right?
I was talking to that's what I'm
She
saying.
has to be coming back. There's no reason you would do the Spurs, then bring back Boba Fett and not bring back Ming-Na Wen. I can't imagine.
It's Star Wars.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, you can literally be cut in half and thrown down a reactor core
and still make it back.
Or thrown into the middle of an exploding Death Star and come back. So, like, I mean,
yeah, I want her to come
back.
Gut
too. Shot. Yeah, she just got gut shot. So, like, I mean, it's like that's just a flesh wound.
All right.
Yeah. I want her to come back too. I was just saying, like, I with Timothy Oliphant, I'm like, okay, so if she comes back, then he could come back. I can see another crew building up here too, and but yeah, I know other. Again, it's
Don't
like there's this. Unfortunately, there's too much knowledge in my head, which didn't I didn't go out seeking it. It popped up and was so.
You gotta avoid that stuff.
Yeah,
I try, but I would have really, really hard.
I know.
I mean, like websites, like mainstream websites, don't even bother trying to like disguise the headlines of stuff anymore.
The worst offender is actually AMC themselves when it comes to this. They literally announced a season before the end of their main Walking Dead show that they're doing a show that's a spin-off with X characters. I'm throwing my hands in the air. This is a visual medium now.
That's fine. You don't worry about AMC. Just watch Invincible on Amazon. You'll be fine.
Invincible on Amazon.
You'll be much better.
Like it's gonna be really good.
I know.
But that's the thing. Like they don't even care anymore. It's not just like, oh, we're not gonna kill them. It's like, well, I didn't know that, and you should have thought about killing them to make your show better. Like you can't just automatically siphon people into categories of, obviously, if you have a show called The Mandalorian, you better have a Mandalorian, but it doesn't have to be Din. I'm just saying, you know what I mean? Think outside the box sometimes on stuff like that. And that type of casting stuff, if they just are not careful about it, or they think they have to get ahead of bad viewership by telling you these people are involved or these characters will be back next season or that type of stuff, it just means you're worried about the thing you're making beyond the fact that it's good. I don't think anyone was worried about the Mandalorian season 2 being good after they watched season 1. So you don't have to shoot out there who's involved and who they're playing.
Well, I don't think that. I mean, did Lucasfilm actually do any of that rumor stuff, or was that all like agents and IMDb and Hollywood Reporter and stuff?
Think about it though.
Hollywood Reporter, Variety, stuff like that.
Yeah. Is it because Mandalorian season 1 was such a success that they went out and sought out this stuff and made it a spoiler for everybody? I don't know a lot of it. That apparently Ken has found out, but Baby Yoda was the best kept secret in Hollywood in 20 years. Right?
Yeah, but I thought about that, but there's no actor to worry about. Like tomorrow, I knew about tomorrow. Tamara?
Yeah, Tamura Morrison.
Tamura. So I knew Tamura. So, but no matter what, like people between his agents and people seeing him go certain, like people, there are nerds out there who were just kind of watching, just like with Game of Thrones, and let's watch Kit Harington see if he cuts his hair. Like if he cuts his hair, then he's not going back. If he doesn't cut his hair, then he could be back the next season. There are those level of fans.
The Hollywood Reporter didn't know who Tamura Morrison was before someone told them.
I mean that's up for discussion, but I'm saying that there are those level of fans out there, so that they are then networking things together. Yeah. So you can hide the child because he's CG and not a person.
He's a puppet.
Whereas, right, when he's a puppet, yeah,
everyone sees him. He's on set. They have to act with him.
Right, but it's a lockdown set. There's not a matter of like, oh, you see him get up in the morning and go off to the set. Like it's on the set. It's locked down. Not being a tangible person definitely helps quite a bit to be able to keep. There's no kind of information flowing about him out in the ether.
Yeah.
Until like Temuera Morrison, and when they cast the people they've cast, when they cast Ming-Na Wen, you knew that she was cast. Like, you didn't know what her role was, but you knew just that she would be playing a character.
I didn't know she was cast,
so,
by the way.
Okay, but I'm saying, like, I knew about it, and the information's out there. Whereas the child wasn't something that you could it was created for the show, and there's no actor there to really keep in mind. So
okay. It just seems,
that's why I think that's viable.
Seems
versus
like you could do more
person.
if you wanted to keep things like this a secret.
I mean, it's I think with a cast member it's a lot harder, especially with an existing one. Like if they snuck in Kenobi,
like I'm in the minority. We don't need to argue about it. They've proven spoiler culture makes shows more popular. Like the idea of putting spoilers out has made shows more popular. They were doing it with Game of Thrones on purpose to get people like hyped up for stuff. So I'm in the minority of like, I wish that I could not know. And so I actively try not to know.
Yeah. I mean, and that's reasonable. I mean, I remember
if I care.
Back when we watched back in Battlestar Galactica, you two didn't watch the opening credits because you're like, they're gonna show me scenes from it. Why would you do that?
I don't watch
and that's
Next
reasonable.
Ons for that reason. If I watch a show that I care, like if I care enough to watch the show and its narrative and it has like Next Ons, I don't never ever do I watch them. I can summarize a plot based on how they cut those things.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I'm unique. I mean, Kit and I have the same exact issue on that, I think.
Yeah.
It's just not worth it. I don't know.
Yeah.
We are way off saying how excited I was about The Mandalorian here. I appreciate...
Were you so excited you went out and got a Din figure and you're like, yeah.
Where'd you find that?
Oh.
A friend of mine found him.
Is that a vintage scale?
A friend of mine. No. This is Black Series.
Oh, it is.
So I've got a Black Series Din, and and I've got little child. The child though is from the fleet, the fleet battle, the fleet something or other.
The one that Kit has.
Mission Fleet.
Yeah. The little.
Yeah. It scales really well. Yep.
I have some stuff here, and we should apologize for the overwhelmingly complainy toy episode we did before, but at some point. It was deserved. I found out on the main pod Hasbro's at it again, and not through Star Wars. They're screwing up everything.
G.I. Joe, Transformers.
No, now they're screwing up Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, it's like you can't find a part of their company that's not trying to fail.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll do a happy toy episode when I get my office organized and we look at toys. Maybe by then I'll be happy to be on camera or something, and we can show stuff off or whatever. I don't know. Kind of doesn't matter.
Well, by then we'll be into season 3 of The Mandalorian, and we'll be jabs. I thought it was funny.
It was funny. I'm just trying to think if season 3 is soon enough.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, of course, I'm excited about everything that's going to come out for the season. Did you guys see the trailer that came out like months back for season 2? We talked about that.
Yeah, I couldn't avoid it.
Okay, so it's like I'm happy to see where things go.
I hope it's Ilum, unfortunately and not Hoth.
Yeah, I've seen some people say that too, and like, okay, I'm like, yeah, I didn't even think about that when
that's the type
we
of
discussed
stuff
it.
You could sit and debate, and it won't ruin the show. I think, unless you look up and find out other things. Like if you just sat with the info and you're like, Ice World, could be these places. That's kind of fun.
It's like 2 places.
Well, I think that makes more sense, especially if he's trying to find Jedi to give the child to. It makes more sense that he would go to Ilum than Hoth.
I wonder if they'll tie in some of the stuff we found out from Fallen Order, where there's going to be a lot of Imperial presence on Ilum and not so much the other way around.
Jedi.
Yeah, that would be cool to see.
And because this isn't this would be in an even deeper point, because when we saw Fallen Order, that's pre original trilogy, right. And we're this is after. This is during the remnants of the Empire. Yeah. So it's like Ilum would be far more like desecrated.
It'll either be completely destroyed and have like lots of Imperial equipment. I mean, they have to take that game into account. It's like the most popular Star Wars game in 15 years.
Yeah.
You know, so some of that stuff will have to cross over. But should we do a favorite moment and get out of here? Did you have a favorite moment from the episode? Just something that's stuck with you since you watched it, Kit?
Boba Fett. I was so
Tamura,
so when,
you mean at the end?
Yes.
Okay.
It's come on, let's. When we were watching it, Sally and I had talked about whether, because we both had seen the spoiler ahead of time that he had been cast,
sure.
And so we were talking about whether he'd be in this or not. And then when Timothy Olyphant shows up in the armor, and we talked specifically about like, well, he could be a different clone, and you know, he could be Rex or something. And then we see the armor, and I was like, and then it was obviously not him. And he's, you know, he says, "Oh, I bought this from a Jawa," and then so we were talking about it, and I was like, it could be a red herring. He could still be in this episode.
See? Yeah.
Yep.
And I
then
had
he
the
showed up at the
exact
end.
opposite reaction of you in my head, because I wanted it to be a different thing, where I was like, yes, they tricked everybody. Tamura's going to be playing a clone. This is going to be awesome. They're going to drag it out for like half a season, and then they're going to drop on people that Boba Fett's actually dead. They pulled the suit out of a dead Sarlacc, and like, you know, oh man, it's funny. Ken, what was your favorite moment?
Probably Cobb Vanth in the saloon. Like, part of me is like John Leguizamo in the beginning.
What
but
did he get eaten by? It wasn't Jawas, right? It was like some other thing, but I couldn't tell what it was.
Other rat
Monsters
creature
in the
like
night.
things, just random dark monster creatures. I was actually like, part of me brain is those like, wait, you left him there, but also he just said that he essentially killed other Mandalorians that he found and stripped their bodies. Like, yeah, you need to kill him, but also go find all that Beskar. Like, dude, like, what are you doing? Like, all that left over. Like, where did it go? I mean, sure, he probably sold off a lot of it.
Don't worry,
but,
the armorer will go get it.
Yeah. Probably, yeah. Cobb Vanth sitting down, and when he takes off his helmet, watching the Mandalorian Den just go, like, pause and just like,
that's not a Mandalorian.
What? Yeah, and just like the just him like, this is stolen valor. Give me the armor.
Give me the armor.
And yeah,
take it off. Oh, you want to do it right here? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was probably my favorite moment.
I think the moment that made me the happiest would be when he showed up in that doorway, and as you're like staring at him, you already know that it's not Boba Fett because of the way he's standing and all that. But I think the moment that sticks with me maybe the most is when he lands on Tatooine, and it's he lands in the same bay. Amy Sedaris, whatever her name is there again. We're talking about stuff from last season where she's like, he doesn't like droids. Get out of there. Like, give me the baby. Do the thing. And R5 shows up, and that opening scene of him landing on Tatooine, and like, we're talking about all the stuff from last season. We're starting from the same place. The same characters are coming back. Hey, look, there's new references. Here's R5. He's got a little blown out thing on the back where his motivator blew up. And so, like, that setup set me up for being so happy when Timothy Olyphant shows up. So that sticks with me too, I think.
Yeah. R5 was a real fun moment because it was like, and it was like, what? And I'm like, that's R5. And it's very specifically the R5 we know because of the grease smears and burns out the back. And I'm like, that's perfect. Yeah. That was really well done.
Very good. It's a labor of love, and I think it shows. So that's it for the short emergency scoring with Claxon's playing right now. I know. It's great.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of any name for this, but I mean,
it's all good.
Yeah, Claxon scoring. I don't know.
I still got to work on the theme song. It'll be for the next time we record. I'll work on it. We'll listen to it live. stare at Obi-Wan Kenobi's amazing hair from Attack of the Clones for a second. Yep. Mm-hmm.
What are you looking at?
Ken said that I had Attack of the Clones hair.
Attack of the Clones Obi-Wan Kenobi hair.
Aha.
Because my locks were touching my shoulders now. I said I couldn't remember what it looked like. And then I looked it up. And it's very pretty. It's very coiffed.
You could have gotten a fake, fake beard for reshoots. Obi-Wan for Halloween.
Yeah. I wish it would fill in. That's all I'm saying. It just doesn't want to do it. All those x-rays they gave us when we were kids.
Not sure if that's how is that supposed to be how that works?
I don't know. I just blame it on that because like I know so many people roughly our age and a little older and a little younger that just have patchiness right here. I assume it's just
from all like dental.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's interesting.
And that's the only thing I can think to blame except for bad genetics.
I've been blaming bad genetics for decades, so I'll stick with it. I'm not ready to listen to any kind of InfoWars telling me how the X-rays are giving me patchy beards and homosexuality.
It was very funny. I had to get an X-ray because she smacked herself at school and turned one of her teeth black. And they were like, we need to give her an X-ray. And I was like, she's like 4. Do we really need to be shooting an X-ray at a 4-year-old for a tooth? And they're like, don't worry.
It's going to fall out in a minute and then
and they're like,
come back in.
They're like, don't worry. It's like 1/10 of the radiation you got when you were a kid per X-ray. I was like, okay.
You're like,
the doctor said that to me unprompted, other than me being like, are we sure we need an X-ray? And he's like actively like, no. The X-rays you got when you were a kid were too much. But don't worry, it's fine.
We clearly didn't know what we were doing when you were a kid, but now we've worked this out. By the way, it's still going to cost $80 for this X-ray. Like, I'm sorry for what now?
Yeah, that's why you haven't.
I remember that when I went to get wisdom teeth out, they're like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna do the X-ray. And that's about $80." I'm like, "This isn't new technology. We're not cracking the code on this, right? This is."
You're paying for their next X-ray machine by doing that. That's what they're.
Yeah, doing. Exactly. I'm like, I think this isn't. Yeah.
Hey, it could have been worse. You know, it cost more.
True. Well, I left and didn't pay because I couldn't afford an $80 X-ray at that point in my So yeah, $80, just another $80. Don't have it. Sorry. I was at a dental college as it was because they were able to do the work for cheaper. So like, oh yeah, go to a dental school. They'll do it for cheaper. It's like a barber college. Like, oh, go there and they'll cut your hair for free. But then it looks like a student cut it.
Because a student did cut it.
Exactly. So I'm like, all right.
How are your student removed molars doing?
They weren't because they eventually got done by a dentist when I got medical insurance and dental insurance, but that's another story. But yeah, I ended up like going, all right, well, this is pointless because it's like I can't even. Before we even do this, I have to get the X-rays. And the X-rays cost more than I'm like. This is no.
A friend of mine went to Mexico to have a root canal because he didn't have insurance.
I've had friends who've done the same thing, or they've gone to other states because it's like it's cheaper for them. They have a friend who's a dentist in like Utah, so they're like, oh, well, I'll go visit my friend. So it's cheaper for them to travel to Utah to get this stuff removed and travel back. Like, what the fuck?
Stuff's pricey in California.
Stuff's pricey. Yeah, that's true. But he also had the work done for free when he was there too.
This is the guy maligning what it costs down here, and he doesn't even have to pay sales tax where he lives.
We have sales tax. We don't have income tax.
Oh, that's right.
We only have sales tax.
Right, and then
it's a stupid,
you just drive down
crazy
to Oregon
system.
And then you don't have to pay sales tax.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I forgot.
Although you too could drive to Oregon and not have to pay sales tax.
Okay, how long does it take?
Technically,
you two can drive wherever they want.
How long
they
does
can
it
go.
take
I mean,
you
they're
to drive to Oregon?
Celebrities.
Because it takes me a little bit longer to drive to Oregon than you.
Probably, yeah. It'd probably take you 12 or 15 hours to get there.
Yeah,